Ensuring soldiers are safe and ready to fight looks different today than it did before COVID-19, and so did the mission of the Army Public Health Laboratory at Fort Meade, Maryland, which belongs to the Public Health Command Atlantic.
One of the things that we do that is more unique to us, to the public health labs rather than the clinical labs, is we do surveillance and we pool the samples such that we can test a lot of samples in a short period of time.
The Army's priorities, readiness, people first, and modernization, are evident with the way that we go about mitigating COVID. Pooled testing is the combining of multiple respiratory COVID samples into one sample. Let me give you an example of what that is. Let us say you have a brigade combat team who's preparing to deploy to a CTC rotation or perhaps to Afghanistan or Iraq. We'll take 3,000 soldiers from that brigade combat team and individually test each of them. Take those tests, put them into, hopefully, optimally, batches of 10. So we'll end up with 300 batches of 10 samples, and those batches, or pools, will be sent to my laboratory. My lab will receive those samples, they will inventory them, they will make sure that what is written on the sample is what should be in the sample, and then we'll begin to extract a little bit of each of those samples, of each of those 10 samples, and put them into one vial. That one vial becomes a pool. That pool will be matched with all of the other pools, and we're able to run them all at one time as opposed to individually. Now, we won't be able to do all 3,000 at one time, but we could certainly do around 300 at one time, thus saving a lot of time. Further, the amount of assay that is required to do a pooled test is a lot less than doing 10 individual tests. And finally, I will tell you, the result that we get from one positive pool does end up resulting in perhaps a retesting of the 10 samples we have, or worst case, the resampling of all 10 soldiers who comprise the pool. But the reality is that it helps us get after the threat of COVID much faster.
The primary benefit of pooling samples is conservation of supplies and reducing testing at clinical labs located at regions' military treatment facilities, especially that of asymptomatic staff or patients.
Every time we run a pooled sampling, sometimes we validate the readiness that they are medically ready to go. Other times we might flag readiness and say, perhaps there's a portion of these soldiers who are unable to go. But this helps us get directly after being able to impact the readiness of the soldier.
When the lab was identified to perform the pooled testing mission, the staff had to ready the facility and processes were put in place to be fully operational by October 1st.
It was a lot of work. It was a tremendous amount of work. It really was, and very high up tempo and high visibility.
It took just a lot of planning and research and ordering items that we didn't necessarily stock, especially kits like that are very specific to doing the SARS coronavirus testing.
I went from being able to do, even just a week ago, perhaps 300 tests at one time, the final portion of tests, to having the ability to do well over 1,000 based on new equipment that has arrived to the lab.
The Army has to be ready to deploy rapidly. So that means the lab has to be just as quick with its testing and getting the results. The lab at Fort Meade is ready to do just that and continue its other valuable work.